I'm back with a brand new pattern. As you can see, I have on something, and this is it, the Hostess Smock. It's very beginner friendly, it's versatile, it's comfortable, it fits a multitude of body types, and yeah, it just has a lot of cool features that I think any beginner or advanced sewist is going to love. The Hostess Smock is best for cooking, crafting, woodworking, anything you can think of. It has these huge double front pockets that are very deep and you can fit a multitude of things. They're reinforced with bar tacks to help it with wear and tear over time. We also have this little pocket up here that you can stick your pencils in. You can stick a knitting needle. You can stick a little teeny tiny seam ripper if you want to put that up there. And then another feature of this is the crossback, which is really nice for just slipping this thing on and off. It's very easy to adjust in the pattern if you need to make it shorter or longer. And then lastly, we have all of these top stitching details. So you can see on the straps, there's plenty of top stitching. We have even more around the edges. And you can do as much or as little as you want. I just really like the contrast that this gives. So yeah, personalize it however you feel. But it's a great pattern and you're gonna be the hostess with the mostest. Materials you're going to need for this project are a ruler, scissors, chalk or something to mark your fabric with, pins, top stitching thread, regular thread, and a 1/4 yard of 1-inch webbing or 1-inch twill tape. Okay, now you're going to need your pattern pieces. So here we have A, which is the main panel. You have one of these cut on the fold. Then we have B, which are our straps, and there's 2 of those. We have our notches and our dots marked for each of those. Then we have C, our pocket, and only 1 is cut of those. Then we have D, which is our top facing, and we just need 1. Then we have E, our corner facings, which are mirrored. So make sure you have 2 that are mirrored. And lastly, we have F, which is our chest pocket, and you just need 1 of those. So we want to have wrong sides facing up, and what we're going to do is iron the long edges 1/2 inch towards the wrong side of the fabric. Now that we have our long edges folded up 1/2 inch, what we want to do is take our strap, fold it in half, lining up the folded edges, and we're going to give it another press so that it stays nice and folded. Now that our straps are folded in at the long edges and folded in half, we are going to mark the top stitching lines. So something to keep in mind is whenever you're doing this, for the sake of consistency, I like both of my folded edges to either be facing inward or both to be facing outward. That way they're mirrored on both sides. So now we can start marking from this notch to this notch our top stitching guides. So to do this, I start with one of the notches at the top and I line it up with the first dot on the pattern and just draw, a straight line all the way to the notch. And then you can line it up with this notch at the bottom and draw another straight line. And then we can just repeat that for the remaining 4. right, now that we have our guidelines drawn, we are going to pin the folded edges of the straps together. And the first thing we're gonna do is edge stitch here with top stitching thread to hold the straps in place. And just try to make sure that you have this edge as flush as possible. Okay, so I have just edge stitched along the folded edge of the straps. And now what we're gonna do is continue top stitching all along our guidelines and finish off the straps. All right, and here are our finished straps. So we have all of our top stitching done and they are looking great. We can now set them aside and we're going to move on to step 4, prep the pocket openings. Okay, so now we are going to work on our pocket openings, and you're going to take your main pocket and your chest pocket, and we want to flip them so that wrong sides are facing up, and make sure that the end with the notches is where you're going to start. So we're going to begin by making this first fold at the first notch on each pattern piece, and we're going to fold and iron flat. So we have folded this once, and now at this second notch we are going to fold and iron again, and this will create our pocket openings. Now that our pocket openings have the raw edges concealed, we are going to flip them over so that right sides are facing up, and we're going to top stitch about 3/4 of an inch from this top edge, and you just want to make sure that you're grabbing this seam allowance underneath. So if you want, you can pin it in place and just go right along that folded edge underneath. Okay, so we have our top edges finished, and I sewed right along that folded edge and then again 1/4 of an inch above that. And now what we want to do is flip over our pockets, and we are going to iron in the remaining raw edges 1/2 inch. We want to take our main panel and have it right sides facing up, and you want to make sure that you marked your pocket placements on this main panel so we know how to evenly space our pockets. And we'll start with the chest pocket. So this is the wrong side, and we just want to flip this over and line it up with our chest pocket dots. And now we can start to pin it in place to attach to the main panel. And just make sure that main panel is laying nice and flat under there and that all your raw edges are tucked in. Now we're going to move on to our main pocket. So again, we want to match it up with our dots. Just kind of get that centered there. And we will start to pin along the edges. Make sure when you're pinning that you are going to grab the main panel underneath so that your pocket is secure. So we have our pockets pinned to the main panel, and now what we're going to do is edge stitch along these 3 sides of each pocket do not edge stitch up here. We want this to be open so we can stick things inside. So edge stitch along here, and then we're going to sew a second line of stitches 1/8 of an inch away from that edge stitch. We have our pockets attached to the main panel. Everything is looking great. And now we want to sew our divider in this main pocket. So you can do this a couple of ways. So the pocket measures about 22.5 inches. So you can mark it over 11 1/4 inches, and that should give you center point. Just double check if you want to measure the full length and divide it by 2, but this is going to be the center point for my pocket. And now what I'm going to do is sew a line here with top stitching, and then I'm going to sew 2 more lines about 1/4 inch from there. And something to note, I like starting from this end of the pocket. That way it just pushes everything up nice and tight. If you start from here, what could happen sometimes is if you have a little excess, you could get some bunching. So I recommend starting from the bottom of the top or pocket and working your way up. Okay, now that we have made our divider in the center of these pockets, the last step we want to do here is add bar tacks to reinforce each of the corners of the pockets. This is just going to help whenever you have them full of things to keep them in place and just reinforce those attachments. Okay, now that we have our bar tacks done, we are going to move on to step 7, finish the main panel edges. So we want to flip our panel so that wrong side is facing up. And what we're going to do is fold these edges 1/2 inch toward the wrong side. So we're going to do these 2 curves and then these 2 side edges. And then we are going to, again, fold it by another 1/2 inch. So we'll conceal the raw edges. So let's go ahead and iron that flat. 1/2 inch and then another fold for 1/2 inch. Now that we have our side edges double folded, we are going to flip it over and top stitch in place 3/8 of an inch from the edge. Now, if you want to, and I find it helpful, you can pin, especially along the curves, just to make sure that they're staying nice and flat. And you just want to take it easy around the curves and make sure that you're grabbing that folded edge of the seam allowance whenever you're top stitching. So as you can see, I have top stitched along the edges 3/8 of an inch, and you can see I picked up that seam allowance underneath. So now we can move on to step 8, attach the straps. So the first step is we're going to prepare our corner facings and our top facing. Now to do that, we're going to flip these wrong sides facing up, and we're going to fold in all of the edges by 1/2 inch. So fold those in and iron them flat. and then I will show you how to place them on your main panel. Okay, so I have folded and ironed all of these over by 1/2 inch. And with these corner facings, you're just going to want to snip off these extra pieces that are sticking out, and we'll conceal the raw edge whenever we attach it. So snip these little guys off. Do a little snip here and here. Now back to our main panel. With the wrong side facing up, we're going to fold this top edge by 1/2 inch, and we're going to iron it flat. Now to attach our straps, we are going to take the more narrow end, and you want your top stitching side to be face down. So this is the wrong side. As you can see, I had some tension issues. This is the good side, and you want to have that facing down, and you're going to put that about 1/2 inch from the top. So we have the more narrow end facing down. Same with this side. We're going to take the good top stitching side, place it face down, and then to hold these in place, you're going to grab your top facing, and we're going to conceal all of these raw edges with this. So with wrong sides together, you're going to sandwich the straps in between your top facing and your main panel. And you want to make sure that the top is flush with the main panel so that these folded edges are lining up. And we're just going to make sure this is folded down at our strap, and then we're going to add our top facing. Make sure this gets folded under, and you can continue pinning through there. So this is what it looks like from the right side. And now we're going to finish attaching the strap. So watch carefully. You're going to fold this as if it's slung on your shoulder, and you're going to twist it so that the right side is facing out. So when you have it like this, it's slung on your shoulder, and it's a nice right side, not twisted. So make sure that you're paying attention to how you're laying everything out. So now we're going to take our corner facing and do the same thing we did with the top facing. We're just going to pin this in place, making sure to grab our strap in between and tuck these little edges under so it's nice and clean. Same thing over here. Just lining up our folded edges and pinning everything in place. So now you want to take your other strap and sling it so you should be crisscrossed in the back. This is the right side facing up, and you want to twist it over here and pin right along those edges, making sure everything is nice and flat and that your strap is sandwiched in between the facing and the main panel. Once we have everything pinned, it's a really good idea to try on the apron and just make sure that everything is laying as it should be and that it's not twisted. So once you have this all pinned and everything is looking as you want it to, we're going to flip it so that right side is facing up. And the first things that we want to sew are a diagonal line here to hold the corner facings in place. So we're going to sew a diagonal line here and a diagonal line here. Make sure that you're picking up this folded edge underneath. It can be a little tricky, so if you want to move your pins from this side to this side, highly recommend. And the other line you want to sew in place is this one up here. So right along that folded edge underneath, make sure you're catching this. And again, highly recommend to move your pins to the right side of your fabric if you're top stitching. Here is what it looks like now. We have our diagonal line sewn and we have our straight top facing line sewn, and I'll show you the back side. We made sure to pick up that folded edge underneath. Same here, right along that folded edge. And now what we're gonna do is sew the perimeter. So the best way to do this is by starting at the bottom end. You're going to first edge stitch right along the outside of this entire perimeter, pivoting at all the corners. So edge stitch all the way around, edge stitch up here, making sure your straps are nice and straight whenever you go over them. Keep edge stitching around this corner. And then after you have your edge stitch done, we are going to top stitch one more time, and it's going to be in between the edge stitch and this original stitch. So you will end up with 3 lines of top stitching around the perimeter. So I'm gonna go ahead and edge stitch. I'll show you what that looks like, and then we'll do the final top stitching. Okay, look how sharp this looks with all of the top stitching. I love the high contrast top stitching with this denim material. Yeah, it just pops. So it's very cool. So we want to flip this over, wrong side's facing up, and we are going to iron this bottom edge up by 1/2 of an inch, and then we're going to iron it again by 1 inch to conceal the raw edges. All right, so I have ironed this 1/2 an inch and then by another inch, and now we're going to flip it over and we are just going to top stitch that down. So about 3/4 of an inch up from the bottom, you'll top stitch, making sure to grab that folded seam allowance underneath. Okay, our lovely smock is complete. I love this pattern. I think it's great for beginners. There's also an element of detail with all of this top stitching. You can do as much or as little of it as you want. But yeah, I'm so glad that you sewed along with me today, and comment below for any questions or comments you have about this pattern. If you like this video, please subscribe to my channel. It really helps build my little sewing community, and I love to hear from you, so leave your comments below. Another thing you can do is follow me on Instagram. It's @themechbrand, and on there I'll post updates on all patterns, sewing tips, and anything new in the mech world. If you do end up sewing the Hostess Smock, please tag the Mech brand on Instagram. I love seeing your makes and seeing the different types of fabrics and top stitching that everyone tends to do. And it helps me get to know the people that are using my patterns, which is great. So anyway, happy sewing. Thank you.